recording.
Hello again, if you've looked at some of the other pushback videos that are out there in the series. If not, thanks for looking at this. My name is Will Arlo. I'm a member of the Canadian Action Party and I have been since 1997. I've run in 7 federal electoral events. I've also since 2006 been a member of the Advisory Committee of Political Parties. The ACPP, the Advisory Committee of Political Parties, is a liaison group that is composed of appointed members of the registered political parties of Canada and the top administrative staff and the CEO of Elections Canada, tasked with dealing with problems that arise from the administration of the Canada Elections Act. And the purpose of this document is to further inform Canadians about what's been going on in Canadian federal politics with regard to electoral fraud, which is different than voter fraud. Voter fraud is something that Conservatives like to talk about because it's a non-issue. It happens from time to time when people who are not eligible to vote actually wind up casting a ballot, but it's been investigated lots of times. It's always been shown to not have affected the outcome. What does affect outcomes of elections are concerted efforts, conspiracies by political entities to manipulate the outcome of elections through illegitimate means. That actually has a long and sorry history in Canada, beginning with Confederation. We might as well start there. We're going to use the word Canada. And John A. Macdonald and Mackenzie Bowell, the first and second Prime Ministers of Canada, were both culpable. Beef, whiskey, bandwagons, and money, making elections happen for Conservatives. If you fast forward then to World War I, you find Robert Borden and Arthur Meighen, mysterious movements of ballot boxes at the front, disenfranchisement of Canadian voters simply because they had relatives in some of the belligerent countries, the extension of the vote to some women if they were husbands or if they were wives of soldiers, but not to others, so just a cynical ploy to get themselves more votes. Then we go to the 80s and the rise of Brian Mulroney and the coincidence of his rise to political prominence and the relationship he had with Karl-Heinz Schreiber and Karl-Heinz Schreiber's admission of flying suitcases full of money out of Germany into Canada, to 2006 when the Conservative Party of Canada, the HarperCons, take power illegally as a result of an electoral fraud scheme called the In-and-Out scheme. 2008, robocalls, voter suppression tactics, and 2011, another voter suppression tactic that in both cases succeeded in getting the Conservatives, the HarperCons, to power. 2008, most people don't know that there was a robocall scandal then, but there was. It just didn't really hit the radar because Elections Canada wasn't prepared to respond to it. It was kind of a first-time thing. 2011, Elections Canada was prepared to respond as best it could, and so Canadians got to know about it. But in fact, in 2007, with Bill C-2, the first legislation the Conservatives brought forward after having illegally seized power in Canada, after their first budget, the first legislation they brought forward was C-2, which was the beginning of the program to dismantle the Elections Act, to debilitate and delegitimize Elections Canada. And the attacks have been constant ever since, right up until where we have now, the latest attack was Bill C-23. And that's what I want to alert you about today, is how Bill C-23 unfolds and what it did. Among the things it did was move the officer of the Commissioner of Elections into the office of the Department or the Director of Public Prosecutions. 2007 Bill C-2 stripped the Commissioner of Canada Elections. It stripped that office of the power to prosecute electoral fraud cases or electoral malfeasance cases, and vested that power to prosecute with the Director of Public Prosecutions, an office that was created by that very act. And Bill C-23 then moved the office of the Commissioner of Canada Elections out of Elections Canada's real estate into the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And now the Commissioner of Elections of Canada speaks once a year, and he speaks to the Director of Public Prosecutions. And the Director of Public Prosecutions speaks once a year to the Solicitor General, who sits in Cabinet. So you can see that the Commissioner isn't really on the scene anymore. So you're not going to get a lot of help there. By all means, get the Commissioner involved if you think something has been done that isn't in the spirit of the election or contravenes the act, but don't expect great results. The most important thing to know is the new voter suppression tactic that has been set up by Bill C-23, and that is the positioning of scrutineers with the right to demand to see the identification documents of Canadian voters. That's done so that when the word is given, the scrutineers can start a program of challenging the authenticity of electors' identification documents, the purpose of which is to slow down the progress of voting, basically to create chaos at the voting place, so that people get frustrated, people get angry, and they leave the polling place. And by the way, when they get frustrated and angry because there's pandemonium at a polling place, most people are going to blame Elections Canada. It's not their fault. The reason that it's going to happen when it happens is because the Conservatives has set it up to happen that way. So when you get to the polling place, the DRO is going to want to have you identify yourself before you get a ballot. Do that. Identify yourself, show the DRO your documents, but do not let the DRO touch your documents. If the DRO is satisfied that your documents are authentic and you are who you say you are, you will be given a ballot whether or not the scrutineer who may demand to see your documents ever sees them. You can refuse, if you refuse, to show the scrutineer your documents, if you refuse to have your privacy invaded in that way. As long as the DRO is satisfied that you have authentic documents, your name will be noted in the ballot book as someone who refused to show the scrutineer your documents, but you'll be given a ballot and you can proceed. So the danger with handing your identification documents to the DRO is that if the scrutineer demands to see them, whether or not you object to having your documents viewed by the scrutineer, the DRO, if the documents are in the DRO's hands, will simply show those documents to the scrutineer over your objections. So to avoid all that, simply hang on to your documents, show them to the DRO, don't let the DRO handle them. It's not guaranteed to solve all the problems. It's only a mechanism to minimize the effect of the latest voter suppression tactic brought to you by the Conservative Party of Canada. The Conservative Party of Canada has a remarkable, it seems, genetic linkage to former Conservative parties in Canada, in that they all seem to share this propensity for electoral fraud. That is to say, that electoral fraud, as notable in Canadian history, is notable for being a Conservative phenomenon. Thanks for watching.